Hello everybody, welcome to the webinar today. Can you just quickly let me know that you can hear me okay using the chat function? Can anybody hear me okay? I've only just got 14 participants so far, but anybody that's here, okay, great. Thank you, Paris Kavaz. Anybody else, just to make sure? Excellent. Hello, Simone, and hello, Jessica. And can everybody see the screen okay? Screen's okay as well. Brilliant. Okay. So we are going to have a look at a task 2 question today, as usual. So I've decided to make this webinar a monthly thing from now on. I wasn't sure whether I was going to continue with it, but I am going to now. And the benefit now is that this session is also being recorded. So previously you didn't have to register your email address to come to these webinars, but I changed that because I wanted to make it so that I could send you the recording after the session, send it to your email address. So just so you're aware, this session is being recorded. Of course, it's really only my voice. Hopefully all of you have your microphone switched off and your video switched off, as that's part of how we do things. But yes, after the session, this will all be recorded, so don't feel quite as obliged to write everything down today. Of course, as always, I recommend taking notes, and well, I'd recommend writing out the essay with me anyway. But yes, this will also be sent to you in a recording after the session as well, so don't worry too much. Anyway, I hope that you're all doing well and gearing up for a fun weekend. Before you go into the weekend, let's have a look at this essay here. This essay, this question, is taken from the IELTS 14 book of the Cambridge IELTS books, so relatively recent, and it looks at a question which is potentially a little bit trickier on the surface, just the way that it's structured, but we can see as we go through this that it doesn't need to be so difficult, and we can take opportunities from the task itself to actually work out a structure for our response. So this is nowadays many people choose to be self-employed rather than to work for a company or organization. Why might this be the case? And what could be the disadvantages of being self-employed? So the usual process here, we want to think about this question. We want to think about the type of question it is. That's the first step on planning our response. We're going to put all of our planning over here in this sticky note. So first of all, what kind of question would you call this? It might not be quite as simple as falling into one of those 4 question types very easily, but generally, how do you think you would label this question? We don't have a huge number of participants today. Usually there's about 100. I think it's because I've made it for registrants. So I'm going to have to ask people to participate a little bit more. Thank you, Amir. Discussion. You could look at this as a kind of discussion here. 2-part essay, Lisa. Yeah, I think I would more refer to it as a two-part essay here, a 2-part task. And we can think of it kind of like a discussion, but we need to be careful because if we think of it purely in terms of a discussion, that would suggest we're looking at 2 different sides. Without giving an opinion, we might be looking at the advantages and the disadvantages. However, here, notice that we're not looking at the advantages and the disadvantages. We're looking at the disadvantages, that's what we're being asked for, but then we're not really being asked for the advantages. Now, do you think that we need to give an opinion to this particular task? As in, when I say opinion, do you think we need to give an opinion on whether it is a good thing or a bad thing to be self-employed? I can see why you might think yes, partly because you've got why might this be the case. When I think opinion, I'm specifically thinking about whether it's good to be self-employed. And no, we're not really asked for an opinion here. And I have seen people respond to this question. I've even seen some attempted model answers answer this question giving an opinion. That is not required. We don't need to say whether being self-employed is a good thing or a bad thing. We're being asked why people go self-employed and what might be some of the disadvantages there. Now that comes a little bit easier. Finding that out is a little bit easier once we've highlighted or underlined the keywords. So maybe some people can give me what the keywords are here. What do we think are some of the keywords? Just to respond to Perez there about the first part, I know what you mean, an opinion about the first part. Um, I think it's tricky here because, yes, you're sort of giving an opinion about that first part, but you're not going to use opinionated language when you do it. You're not saying, I think it is good or I think it is bad. You're just saying, this happens because, essentially. So that's how that's a little bit different. But yes, we've got some nice keywords coming in here. Self-employed, absolutely. I think that use of the word nowadays is actually quite important as well, because they're saying nowadays people are doing this. Why are people doing this now as compared with the past? They don't write as compared with the past, but that's kind of implied. Otherwise, they might just write many people choose to be self-employed, not nowadays many people choose to be self-employed. So that word nowadays can sometimes be more important than you might think. But of course, yes, rather than to work for a company or organization, I'm just going to add all that there. You may even pick out the verb choose as well. It becomes an element of choice. That could become a key component of your response as well. We'll see how that might look later. And then, of course, just why. To be honest, why might this be the case? You could just paraphrase that as why. So add that there. Notice that you're not necessarily asked for multiple reasons. It's okay to give more than one reason if you do that, but you're also, it's acceptable to write just one reason as well. There's no numerical imperative there, let's say. What about the disadvantages? Of course, what could be the disadvantages of being self-employed as well? That's very useful. Oh, and I didn't mention it before, but just so you're aware, if any of you are keeping time, we will try and finish this essay today. I'm hoping to finish it within the hour, so you should be able to finish by 3 my time. But be aware that we are going to try and finish the actual essay, and then we will complete the class. Great, so we've got our keywords there. So now we can move on to the plan. So we talked about this being a two-part essay. And so all that really means is that we want to answer the first question in the first body paragraph and the second question in the second body paragraph. So although it may look a little bit more complicated, that's what I meant by there's an opportunity here. The structure is given to you straight away, so that you don't have to worry about that so much. So BP1 is going to be the why, and then BP2 is going to be the disadvantages, naturally. So now I'm going to ask you guys for some ideas, some thoughts about this. So tell me, remember the key part there, nowadays, that's a key element here. Why do you think some people choose, or many people choose to be self-employed? Flexibility, yeah, that's one thing. Your own boss, schedule more free time. This is all good, but can you think of anything? Well, there was more flexibility in the past as well, and you had your own boss in the past as well when you chose to be self-employed. Can you financial independence again was something you had in the past if you were self-employed? What's different now? Location is a nice idea. I feel like there's something going in that direction. What about location? Think about what I'm doing now. I'm self-employed now. How am I able to do this right now? Remote work, yes, nice, Perez Cavas. That's good. Working from home, internet, exactly. So nowadays, many people choose to be self-employed. Part of the reason for that might be because we can. We can do it much more easily. You could talk about there being fewer barriers to entering self-employment. So we could say that, yeah, well, let's go with that word there. So this will be the topic, the fact that the topic sentence are that there are fewer barriers nowadays to self-employment. That could be useful. We will come to the idea of the advantages of self-employment itself, but notice the question. The question was not what are the advantages of being self-employed. I think if the question were what are the advantages of being self-employed, we could think of things like convenience, and being your own boss, financial independence, flexibility. That would be about advantages. So notice that the question is, why is this happening? Why might it be the case that nowadays many people choose to be self-employed? So that's a bit trickier to notice, but do acknowledge the difference there. Hopefully that makes sense. So fewer barriers now due to, let's say, due to technology. We'll think about in fact, before going that far, let's put it in a separate sentence. So can you remind me, what does the S stand for here? So T is the topic sentence. What does S stand for? Support sentence. Good. So here we're really thinking of explaining what we mean. So either it will be a this is because or a this is good because. Here it doesn't make sense to say this is good because. Instead we want a this is because. We need to explain what we mean. So maybe a due to. And here we can talk about technology because that separates us from the past now. So technology, we could just write tech again, try to think of ways that you can save a bit of time. Technology makes it more easy to set up. So we'll just say easier. And then what do you think we can follow a sentence like a support sentence with? What kind of sentence would come next? Example, exactly. Now, you can take examples from your own personal experience, or you can think of this hypothetically. Can you think of an example? What particular businesses might be easier to set up now than they were in the past due to the internet? Uber is a good one, yeah? Any more? Online sales could be a bit more specific, I think, there. With examples, it's great if you can be as specific as possible because it creates a stronger mental image in the mind of the reader. You've got the gig economy, that's nice language, but again, it's quite general. Freelancing website, web content software, tutor, photographer. Okay, I'm going to be a bit cheeky here. I'm going to use Pareskeves's example there, tutor, just because for me personally, that is what I am. So I think it would be easiest on my front. But when you come to do this yourself, absolutely try and use your own example. Use a number of different examples. So there's lots of things we could talk about here, but let's go with tutoring for now. And the best thing to do here, within the same sentence, we're not moving on to a different sentence here, is think about what happened in the past. This is a nice way of bringing in different tenses, by the way. If we talk about the past, we can bring in a different tense. When a tutor or a teacher wanted to go self-employed in the past, what did he or she have to do? Open a school. Yeah, maybe they didn't need to go quite as far as opening a school, but certainly you're on the right track there, Lisa. I would say maybe just renting a classroom. I wouldn't say apply for a job in a school, Preskavas, because that would suggest that you're becoming employed. Remember, we're thinking about self-employment here, but you could rent a classroom for yourself and stay within self-employment. So rent a classroom might be something that you could go for. And here you've got a good opportunity to use maybe a three-part list and to suggest that I'm just going to add two or three. I'm not going to think of the ideas here, but the sentence would typically say something like, for instance, a tutor in the past would have to do A, B, and C if they wanted to be self-employed. And then you move on to the alternative, which is now, you can say, in contrast, today, what does a teacher have to do today to go self-employed? Just, yeah, go online, Sylvia. Yeah, just basically have an internet connection. Of course, it certainly helps if they have a website, open a website, as Lisa said there. But typically, you really only need an internet connection. You can advertise yourself through Facebook, which is free. You know, you can. There's lots of different things you can do. You don't even need to leave your house, though. You can. You don't have to, let's say, risk as much of an investment. You don't have to put as much money down. So we'll just write the internet. So we'll say now, internet, less investment, something like that. Again, don't worry about the actual words themselves. Yeah, and a laptop and an internet and the internet, all very useful ideas. And that should be our paragraph. Notice I don't have five sentences there. I anticipate that this could be a longer paragraph. If I need an extra sentence, I'll add it. The result we don't really need. I know I often talk about a result, but the result is implied in this sentence, so you don't necessarily have to add it on. So let's move into the disadvantages. And here, notice a key aspect. I'm going to underline it here. It is a plural. So you are asked for more than one. So it is quite important that we try to add more than one. So let's come up with a first one. What might be one of the disadvantages of being self-employed? Longer hours, unstable profit, financial constraints, higher risk. Yeah, so some ideas are naturally better than others. The best ideas are the ones where it's harder to apply them to the opposite, if that makes sense. So, for example, if I come back, sorry if I'm going to pick on you, Lisa, but so Lisa, you mentioned longer hours here. That, yes, of course, it could apply to being self-employed, but there's no reason why it wouldn't also apply to employment, depending on the company that you worked for. You might instead say something like, you don't have to take your work home with you. Again, that could, I suppose, be applied to being employed as well. I prefer this idea that, sorry if I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Digve mentions here an unstable profit. I think that is much more applicable to being self-employed. So, Silvio put it as uncertainty there, and Kazushi, yeah, no guarantee of salary. That idea is more applicable to self-employment. So it's a better idea, basically. So let's go with, how could we term this? Maybe you can finish what I'm going to write here. A nice collocation here. Financial, what, instability? Actually, you could go with that. It's not the one I was thinking of, actually. Insecurity. Good, Sylvia. But yes, Perlis Kavashi could also say financial instability too. I just had the word insecurity in my mind, so I'm going to write that down. So financial insecurity. Why? Why is a self-employed person financially insecure, at least in comparison to an employed person? Maybe tell me, what does an employed person typically benefit from? A regular income, exactly. So well done. So they can just they're able to expect the same amount of money coming in on the same day of each month. So you can put that out there. So I don't usually do this, but no, I'm not going to refer to it as an alternative. I'm just going to refer to it as a support sentence. But I'm going to put here employment means equals regular. Again, think about your topic related vocabulary here. So a regular what? A regular income, you could say, regular salary, or a regular pay. So, for example, fixed confirm amount, Digivay, that would not be a collocation, but you could paraphrase it to something that is a collocation. Pay, paycheck. Good, Simone. Well done. Yeah. So paycheck. So they have a regular paycheck coming in every month. Do think about the vocabulary element here. We want to be thinking about topic related vocabulary, about collocations, all very important. So, okay. So when you're in employment, you have this. And then let's just to call this another support sentence here. What about when you are in self-employment? What's the difference? That's one thing. Yeah, you have to take care about your own taxes. I feel like that's slightly separate. We may even be able to talk about that as a different disadvantage. Uncertainty about the company benefit. Yeah, there is that. Again, that vocabulary is just a little bit unnatural, doesn't quite have that topic related vocabulary sound to it, but it's on the right path there. So inconsistency, again, it's not quite specific enough, but again, it's the right idea. Professional V would vary. There's that. Basically, you can't. Whereas when you work for a company, you guaranteed that income. When you are working for yourself, it's less consistent because you can't guarantee what your customer base is going to do. And here is where you can, again, use that topic related vocabulary. So let's say irregular customer, could we say customer base? You might say customer behavior. And okay, a thought that's just come to me now. This is a really nice idiom. I think this idiom is okay to use in the essay. So I've talked about in the lectures that sometimes on the Udemy lectures that sometimes idioms can come across as a little bit too informal, but some of them are absolutely fine, that they're good. And this one is very much topic related. Feast or does anybody know the end of this idiom? It's feast or something. So things are going either very good or very bad sometimes. Famine. Nice one, Lisa. Good. Feast or famine. So we might be able to use that vocabulary in there as well. Nice advanced vocabulary. It's a feast or famine kind of income. Okay, right. So that's one disadvantage. Now we need to move on to another one. So let's call it T2. What could be another disadvantage? That's actually quite nice as well from Parescavas there. Market fluctuation, we might even be able to include that. So see if we come to it later. Some nice vocabulary. If it's difficult to think of disadvantages, by the way, you might think instead about the opposite. You might think about the advantages of employment rather than the disadvantages of self-employment. That in itself may instigate the thought about the disadvantage of self-employment. So maybe we could think about that. What are some of the advantages to being employed? And we talked about consistent income, that's good, but we need to think about something else now. Colleagues, you might say colleagues. Again, it is something that you could have when you're employed. I don't personally. I do have colleagues, but they're in different parts of the world. But it doesn't mean if you're working for yourself, you might own the company, you might work with others. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't work with colleagues. Productivity constraints, growth guide by experienced supervisor, pension and other benefits, difficult to obtain work-home balance. That's a good idea there. No regular holidays. Okay, so the one that keeps coming up, so I think I can see three examples of it here are benefits. So we've got benefits, no regular holidays, pension and other benefits, additional benefits, perks, insurance. Because that one's coming up the most, let's go with that one. So benefits. And yeah, you don't really have these same benefits when you work for yourself. If you did, you'd have to kind of gift them to yourself out of your own pocket. So that wouldn't really make them benefits. So yes, benefits. And then you can kind of go into talking about what these are. So we've got some examples already here. So insurance, holiday, what else do we have? Gifts might not be really specific enough. Um, I think I saw pension as well back there. So let's go with pension too. And again, here's another nice opportunity for a three-part list. Great. Okay, so let's call that our plan there. And let's just move this out the way over in the corner here. And let's get started on writing this response. It's quite nice because we've got about 35 minutes until the hour closes. It imagines that in an ideal world, this plan would have been written in 5 minutes. Of course, when you're teaching how to write a plan, it's going to take a bit longer. But yeah, so let's get started on the introduction. Now, introduction, what do we want to do first? What kind of sentence would be useful? These days, yeah, that's a way of paraphrasing nowadays. I wonder if we can do a little bit better here than just saying these days, though. Recently is good. How about instead of just changing the word nowadays, how about we also try to change the structure of the sentence? So here, the sentence begins with this part. What about if we change it and start with this part? Because you could say, rather than to work for a company or organization, nowadays many people choose to be self-employed. Notice that you have a structural choice as well. It's not just the vocabulary. What's another way of saying rather than? Beginning with I. Instead. Good. Excellent. Instead, would it just be instead? Instead of. Now that a lot of people will make this mistake of either writing instead when they want to say instead of, or writing instead of when they want to write instead. But as a synonym for rather than, you need an instead of. So instead of, now here they've got rather than to work. Would it be okay for me to write instead of to work? Good, well done. Simone, Manpreet, Sylvia, Jessica, all good. Instead of working for company, organization, any paraphrasing here? Factory is, it's too, let's say, architectural to say factory. We need something more conceptual. Enterprise, industry, business. I'll go with businesses. Instead of working for other businesses. Okay, and then just like here, they've ended the sentence here, but we're going to add the comma. So comma, and then we move on to the other part. So now we can be thinking of what to write next. Let's put this at the end, in fact. So let's try to paraphrase this. How could we paraphrase many people? Some people, that sounds like less to me. An increasing number of people? You could actually, I suppose you could say an increasing number of people, but the task doesn't say more people are choosing. It just says many people choose. So I would prefer here to just say a large number of people, because it's many. Again, don't say most, because that suggests it's over 50%, but a large number of people would work. A number of is also okay. A large number just emphasizes it a bit more. A large number of people. Okay, how might we paraphrase choose? Decide, opt for. Okay, prefer. Okay, something that you could do instead, you could say are deciding to, or opting for, or considering. Consider doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it, bear in mind. So here's something you could use. You could say are turning to self-employment. Notice that we've moved from the adjective here to the noun. And by adding turning to, you're suggesting that they're moving away from regular employment. So it adds an element to the sentence that actually wasn't even there in the first place. So turning to, again, indicates some stronger vocabulary. And then we can end it with the time reference. What could we say? Shifting would also be good, Tin Weng. Yeah, a shifting to self-employment. I guess that works. A shifting to self-employment. Sounds a little bit odd to my ear, but it's the right idea. I think still turning is a bit stronger. But in this modern age, yeah, we could go with in this modern age, or stronger and more natural to me is in the modern age. In the modern age. If we said in recent years, just bear in mind we'd have to say have been turning to. Because when you use in recent years, it's more natural to use the present perfect. Okay, now all I want to do now is talk about the plan. Remember, there is no opinion here. You're not giving an opinion, but with this plan, how would I start a plan sentence? This essay will, good. This essay will do what? Give me a nice verb here. Highlight, illustrate, explore. Let's go with explore from Lisa there. This essay will explore. How could I paraphrase? Why might this be the case? The reasons for this, good. However, my concern is that in the actual plan, we really only came up with one reason. Remember, it is okay to just write one reason, but then make sure that you don't create some inconsistency by writing a plural in the introduction and then a singular in the body paragraph. So yeah, you might say the main reason, although the main reason kind of indicates that you have ultimate knowledge, like you know what the main reason is. So we need to soften that a little bit. So we might say we'll explore what the main reason might be. Notice as well, this is how the task phrases it too. Why might be this the case? So we need to make sure we avoid being overconfident and generalizing. So this essay will explore what the main reason might be. Or just to give you something else here, you might say what might be behind this choice, or we could talk about things changing. So maybe trend. Good. Well done, Pareskavash. You got there even before I wrote it down. Excellent. So this essay will explore what might be behind this trend. And what else is it going to do? What is the essay going to do in the second half? Explain the disadvantages. Yeah, we could go with explain. A verb that you might not typically see, but is also very useful, is outline. Outline. So you're kind of drawing an image of these disadvantages. So outline, let's say, some of the drawbacks. Again, if you say just the drawbacks, again, you might be indicating that you're just covering them all, but you're just saying some of the drawbacks. Outline some of the drawbacks, or you might even say two of the drawbacks to be more specific. Outline two of the drawbacks that, what are we discussing here? What is the topic? How could we paraphrase this essentially? Good, nice one, Lisa. Let's go with that. Working for yourself can, what could I finish with? A nice verb. That working for yourself can, thinking one beginning with B, ideally. Bring. Bring is just my choice here. Of course, there are many different verbs that you could use. You could say cause as well, but I'm just going to use bring. Okay, so just reading that out all together, just to help to consolidate this in your mind. Instead of working for other businesses, a large number of people are turning to self-employment in the modern age. This essay will explore what might be behind this trend and outline two of the drawbacks that working for yourself can bring. Nice. The word count on that, just to show, it's a little over 40 words, so it doesn't need to be very long. That's pretty great. 40 words there, 42 words. So how do you think we could open the first body paragraph? Good, I like that, Amir. Yeah, one of the most significant reasons. Let's just go with that. One of the most significant reasons. I also very much like the grammar there, Amir, as well. You've included that uh, S, the plural, on the end of reason. A lot of people forget that because of the use of one, but notice one of a number, one of many, so it should be a plural. One of the most significant reasons. We've also got a superlative in there as well, so very useful. One of the most significant reasons why, what is happening? What are we describing? You can be a little bit cheeky here and maybe use some of the task language. You didn't use it in the introduction, so you may get away with using it here. A number of is a little bit too repetitive from the introduction for me, but you might just say many people. We haven't used it yet, so I think it's okay to use it here. Many people. I mean, if you wanted to maybe slightly paraphrase, you could maybe go with many individuals. That's also okay. So that's a nice way of paraphrasing people, particularly when we're thinking of things on an individual level. So why many individuals, and let's move this into the present continuous, just to talk about this as a trend. I know they've gone with this in the present simple here, but I think you can talk about this in the present continuous as well, because this might change in the future. Why many individuals are choosing. Can you think of a synonym to choose, beginning with D? Nice and simple there. So deciding. I'm assuming, Jessica, that you meant to write deciding there rather than declining. So many individuals are deciding to... Okay, now what could be a collocation here? To what self-employed? What verb would be appropriate here? Be, become. I'm thinking of a shorter one beginning with G, just two letters. Get would not be the collocation. Go is good. So again, very simple vocabulary. It looks very simple. Go, easy verb, right? But it's a good way of demonstrating those collocations again. So you go self-employed. So one of the most significant reasons why many individuals are deciding to go self-employed could be that, now here we want to come to the plan. How can we finish this sentence? I want to introduce this comparative form. There are, good, keep going, Manpreet. There are fewer barrier or fewer barriers? Remember that plural there, Akinti. Fewer barriers. Let's be a bit more specific. Fewer barriers to... Now here, I wonder if you can think of what I'm going to write here. I want to use referencing. I want to start indicating to the examiner that I know how to use referencing to improve my coherence and cohesion. So I'm going to use to this something of employment. Notice that I haven't written self-employment because that wouldn't make sense. I'm referring back to going self-employed. This type, good, this form of employment. But you can write this kind of employment, this type of employment, this form of employment, lots of different nouns you could use there. To this form of employment, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to add this word. Could be that there are fewer barriers to this form. Let's say there are now fewer barriers to this form of employment than there were in the past. So here you're now introducing another tense, you're bringing in the past, and you've introduced a comparative form as well, so you're showing your comparative grammar. It's quite a long sentence there, longer than I usually like, but you're including many features here. So you're showing your grammar, you're showing your vocabulary, you're making a very clear opening statement about what this paragraph is going to be about. So it is okay that it's a bit longer. Now we can move into the support sentence. And as I don't know if you remember, but when I was setting up this support sentence, I suggested that we start with due to. Yes, as I was just saying there, Tin Weng, it is okay that your topic sentence is a bit longer, particularly if it needs to be longer. I mean, the topic sentence is as long as it really needs to be. A lot of the time it will be shorter. It just ended up a little bit longer in this case, but notice that we were showing a bit more grammatical range by introducing comparative forms and introducing another tense within the same sentence as well. So yeah, there's that to consider. So due to what? So here we've got due to tech. That's a bit simple. Due to tech. Can we make that a little bit more advanced? That may be a clue, the word advanced. Advanced technology. Can you swap those words around? That's better, yeah, Manpreet, I like that. So due to technological advancements, or you go with advances, either of those is possible. So due to technological advancements, let's go with due to technological, advancements, um, and let's be a bit more specific. So what word am I going for here, do you think? I'm talking about where they've come from. Introduced by, and let's go with well, up here we have the modern age. I'd really like to use this now, so I'm actually going to, I mean, this is harder to do on the day, of course, but I'm going to change that to these days, and I'm going to add the modern age down here. But, you know, if you'd already done that, you can write the computer age, the digital age. That's all okay as well. I just particularly like the modern age being here. So due to technological advancements introduced by the modern age, because I've added this introduced by the modern age, I feel compelled to go back and add something here. What do you think I should add here? Because now I'm being more specific. Good. We want a definite article here because we're becoming more specific. So due to the technological advancements introduced by the modern age, now we have what punctuation? Good. We want a comma, and then we can move on to this part here about how it's easier. How can we carry on then? People can do what? In what way? Again, try to bring in that topic related vocabulary. What are people trying to do? What are we talking about in this essay? People can now create their own business. Right idea. Good, Amir. Can we change the verb create to a stronger collocation? Build is better, but it's still not quite strong enough for me. Build their own business. I wonder if you can come up with a phrasal verb. SU. Startup, not quite. That's more of a noun that we would use. But it's close. Definitely want the up. Set up. Good, Simone. People can now set up. People can now set up their own businesses. Notice I'm in the plural here, just because I'm talking about people. People can set up their own businesses. Now, is it right to say easier? Is that okay? Amir, good. It's a no on this. Why? Well done, Jasmine. Good. And Jessica. So we want more easily because we're modifying the verb, in this case, the phrasal verb. So we want an adverb and not an adjective. So more easily. Great. Let's move on into the example. How could we introduce an example? For instance, okay, now I've got an idea. This idea is actually going to reduce the paragraph into just 3 sentences. I don't often recommend this. It's not like I don't recommend it, but it's a bit more challenging. We can combine those 2 sentences because they contrast with one another. And when 2 ideas contrast with one another, we can introduce a complex sentence by way of a subordinating conjunction like while or whereas. Good, exactly. So let's start with that. So whereas, and we've written in the past just a moment ago. How could I paraphrase this? Maybe you could be specific. When was there not the internet? How long ago was that? You could say previously. It's okay to be a bit more specific though. Last century, I mean, we had it in 1999, so I would be hesitant to write that. But we could say maybe like 30 years ago. Or we could write previously, that's also okay. But you're just, I think by writing this, you're indicating where the cutoff was for this particular kind of employment. So whereas 30 years ago, and then let's describe, who are we describing here? We're describing self-employed who, which professionals? Tutors, yeah. Tutors or teachers, either one of those is fine. Self-employed tutors. Now, what is the grammar? I want to use the modal verb have to. What form should it be in? Teachers had to. You could say that. That's okay. Had to. What else could you say? I want to talk about a habit or something, not really a habit or almost like a rule, something you had to do in the past. I'm thinking of a would. Now this is strange here. This might look a little bit odd. Good, Manpreet's got it there. Would have to. So it was something that you had to do in the past, but that was like a regular thing that you had to do. It's almost like a used to, I suppose. So when I was younger, I used to walk home from school, or when I was younger, I would have to walk home from school. You use it when you've got that modal verb have to there to imply an obligation or something that you couldn't avoid. So you could use would have to here. It doesn't indicate the future. So as 30 years ago, self-employed teachers would have to, you can think of it also as being part of a conditional where you don't need the other side. They would have to do this if they wanted to set up their own business. They would have to rent classrooms. Again, notice that I'm just using the plural here, but you could use singular. You could change the example to suit you. Would have to rent classrooms. Now, remember, I wanted a 2-3 here. What else would they have to do? Think about what you pay for. Like, I have my laptop already. It provides me with my work. But if I was working in a classroom, what else would I have to pay for? Yeah, they maybe pay for copies. What about something beginning with EQ that kind of covers all of this? Good. Pay for equipment. And okay, now because this is my area of work, I have some ideas on this. Let's say share something in person. Again, just to stress that this would have to be in person and not online. Share what? What's a nice teaching word here? material. You can actually put this in the plural. I know that material is often used in an uncountable context, but when we talk about it in the sense of teaching materials, like exercises, you can put this in the plural, and it actually, I think it's better as in the plural sense there. Pay for equipment and share materials in person. You might even just add teaching materials, just to improve that collocation. Okay, now notice I've added a comma there. This indicates that we've come to the end of that dependent clause. We're now moving on to the independent clause. That's this part here. The now, internet, less investment. So let's start with a now. Then we reference back to those teachers with a simple pronoun, they. Only, it can only indicate tutors, so just now they. Pay for equipment. No, we're not thinking about specific. We could say the equipment. I think we could say either there. The equipment to mean specifically, or equipment in general for teachers. The funny thing about definite articles is that there's often a grey area whether to use them or not. That can be a good thing because it means you can get away with writing them or not. Sometimes it's very clear whether there should be one or not. This one, you could use it, you could not use it. Both are okay. So now they, what? What do they have to do now? What can they do now? Now they can, what are they doing? What are teachers doing? Simply teaching. Now they can teach how? With what? A bit more specific. Now they can teach online lessons. Now they can teach virtual classroom. Now they can teach on the internet. Yeah, now they can teach using, and you might stress it with only the internet. And let's say a laptop. I like that, Valentina. I really like that expression, comfort of their homes. Let's use that instead. Now they can teach, let's say, from the comfort of their own home. And and then we can use a so long as, maybe, so long as they have an internet what? Connection. Good. Arguably they need a laptop as well. I think this is implied. I don't think we need to add that. Now, I'm going to change one aspect of this sentence just to make it more specific to the task and not, oh, own repeated twice. Did I? Oh, I did. From the comfort of their own, sorry, home. Thank you for catching that, Manpreet. So now they can teach from the comfort of their own home so long as they have an internet connection. I've written teach, which is good. I asked you to go for that. Let's make it more specific to self-employment. I want to think of more business-related vocabulary. And I'm going to write this. Now they can are, that's a verb, they're operate something. Operations, good. Operations here, not in a medical context, in a business context, just to mean the things that you do for your work, specifically related to business, but that can be teaching, as teaching is part of your business. And run, excellent. So here, again, you've got another example, not only of topic related vocabulary, but also of collocation. So you're really strengthening your vocabulary score when you do that. Perfect. Let's move into the second body paragraph here. Let's just keep an eye on the word count too. 139, that's not too bad. So 140, if you double that, you'd be under 280, maybe a bit on the long side. This second paragraph might be a bit shorter. We'll see what happens. Okay, and you've got some lovely complex sentences here as well. This is why I say that I usually recommend writing 4, because this is very challenging. But if you have the ability, there's no reason why you wouldn't write 3 sentences if you think you could. There's nothing inherently bad about that. It's just a bit more difficult. So you have to, work within your limitations. Okay, now we've written a paragraph that's not necessarily about the advantages, but it's a paragraph which is very positive. Yep, Tim Wang, yep, 3 sentences is okay. It doesn't matter how many there are. That's not really important. I usually recommend 4 just because 4 is less challenging. This is just more challenging, so work within your own limitations. Okay, now this is a very positive paragraph. Because this is moving to quite a negative paragraph, how do you think we could start it? Remember, it's not a discussion essay, but how could we start it? However, good, nice, Lisa. Just a simple however. It indicates to the reader that they're about to read a paragraph which has a negative feel to it. So it just improves that coherence and cohesion. You're preparing the reader. So, however, now what are we talking about here? Again, I'm challenging you here, but how again can we paraphrase self-employment? So we've written working for yourself. We've written running operations. We've written going self-employed. How else could we say it? Freelancing is a specific kind of self-employment. It's not necessarily being self-employed. So that's doing jobs temporarily, maybe for different companies and they're paying you, but it's not necessarily self-employment. Let's use that verb run again, but now we'll use it as a gerund, just to mix it up, show a different form. Running your own what? Business. Good. You might say company or business. Either one of those is fine here. Running your own business. So we did set up your own business. Now we're going to go with running your own business. So, however, running your own business, what verb can come now? I'm going to talk about disadvantages. So, running your own business does what? Can. Good. Nice. Well done from Tim Wing. We need to avoid that generalization, but it can do what? Can come with, can lead to. Yep, all of those are good. Let's go with presents. Yeah, let's go with presents. But any of those are absolutely fine. Can also present. Can also present what? Proprietor? I'm assuming, Digivedi, you're talking about the self-employment aspect. I wouldn't use that word personally. It's almost a bit too. Uh, there's very few cases where that would be applicable. So I wouldn't use that. Difficulties, 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 difficulties. Good. Lots of people saying that. Let's go with that. I like that one. Let's go with present. Yeah, can present a number of difficulties. Let's go with, because we didn't use. Oh, we have used a number of, but that's okay. Present a number of difficulties. Now, the first one I want to write, I want to introduce it after a comma with an expression that indicates that it is, to me, the most important one. And that is the expression something among them. Anybody know what I'm going to go with here? It begins with a C. Not getting many responses, so I'm going to just give it to you here. We've got challenges, cause, chief. This may look a bit odd, but chief among them essentially means the most important of which is, or the biggest of which is, the most difficult of which is. So you're saying it's the biggest difficulty essentially. Chief among them. So chief among them, and then you can move without any verb straight into the actual noun itself. That may look a bit weird, but the verb is implied. So it's almost like saying the chief among them is, or the primary one is, but you can actually drop that to be verb. You can just say chief among them, financial insecurity. If you are a bit worried about that vocabulary, that grammar, that's okay. You could just say something like present a number of difficulties, one of which is. That's also perfectly fine. One of which is more than good enough. So chief among them, financial insecurity, one of which is financial insecurity. Now we're coming to that support sentence. And now in the previous paragraph, I didn't use the expression in contrast. So I'm actually going to open this sentence here with an in contrast, and I'm going to join those sentences together. I know I'm kind of straying from the plan in terms of the number of sentences here, but when you have the ability, you can do this. It's not a problem. So in contrast to, now we have that support sentence. So we're going to, yeah, you could also say that as well, Kazushi. Chief among them being financial insecurity, also okay. That's what's implied there, essentially. So in contrast to employment, and we need to be a bit more specific. Self-employment is a kind of employment, so let's be more specific. Employment within what? an organization, a company, exactly, any of those are good. In contrast to employment within a company, now I'm going to bring in this idea here using the preposition in which, so when you're in a company, a regular paycheck, so I'm just using the vocabulary I wrote about earlier. This grammar is getting quite advanced, so don't worry if you're not entirely keeping up, but notice the vocabulary that we're using at least. In contrast to employment within a company, in which a regular paycheck can be, notice the passive voice here, can be expected. Good, because we're in that passive voice. The paycheck is the subject here. The paycheck doesn't expect itself. It is expected by us. We don't need to say by an employee. That part's implied. So we can just drop that out. Which a regular paycheck can be expected. And I'm going to use language that I used earlier when I was talking about this, on the same day each month. Now we can end that part, the comma there. So in contrast to, notice here, we didn't say in contrast employment, but this is kind of like using the whereas again. We've got in contrast to employment, or you may paraphrase it to say, whereas with employment, a regular paycheck can be expected. So it's another way of saying this really. And then we can move on to talking about this part of the plan. So we could write something like, well, I'm not going to ask you to paraphrase it again. We've done it a lot. Let's just go with it here. Self-employment. What's the difference? What happens? Does not guarantee. Good. Does not guarantee what? Our plan might not be super helpful at this point. We may need to just think on our feet a bit. Does not guarantee what? A regular income. My only concern with saying a regular income is that we've written regular twice within the same sentence. So I wonder if you can think of a different good. I mean, Manpreet just used the word fixed. It wasn't in the same place, but yes, and we got it from Valentine there as well. Let's say fixed instead. So self-employment does not guarantee a fixed income, and I'm going to go off script a little bit here. I'm going to add a comma and write relying. And no, I'm not going to add a comma. I'm just going to say and relies, and or let's say and can rely instead. It doesn't always rely instead on and now I can use that vocabulary we discussed before down here, feast or famine, and can rely instead on a feast or famine type of income. But now I want to change fixed income over here. Let's move that to a fixed salary. It's a good thing we've got so many synonyms here. This is the advantage of working on your vocabulary. You can go back and change things and show your range of topic related vocabulary. Right, so we've written quite a lot about that particular disadvantage. Let's come on to the last one here. How can we introduce another point? The only reason that I've written hyphens here is because I'm using it like an adjective. I'm not using it. So you could either say, my work is very feast or famine. You could say that. It sounds a bit strange, but with that, you would take out the hyphens. But because of the fact I'm using it in an adjective sort of form, that's why I've added the hyphens. I don't know whether you would be marked down for not using them or not, but I would recommend if you're going to use it like an adjective, use those hyphens. Another important moreover, let's use Tim Weng's ones there. Moreover. Now, benefits. How could I talk about benefits? I wonder if you can use referencing here. Another way of saying self-employment, you could talk about the people and yes, you could go with people who work for themselves, or you could be referencing and use not these, close Sylvia, not these, those, good, those who. You always say those when you're referencing people in a non-specific way. So those who work for themselves. Moreover, those who work for themselves, what can't they have? So cannot. I'm actually going to add the adverb typically here, again, to prevent myself from making a generalization. So usually, typically, cannot typically enjoy. I like that verb, Manpreet, because it suggests that they're missing out on something that's good. So cannot typically enjoy benefits, company benefits. Make sure we use that word first of all. In fact, I'm probably going to use benefits later in the conclusion. Or you could say benefits here, but another, yes, Valentina, nice. Perks is what I'm thinking. Also got it from Manpreet there as well. So company perks, but then later when we come to the conclusion, we can write benefits. So company perks, such what? Such, this is where I'm going to introduce the example, such as, nice and simple, such as health insurance, holiday time, and pension. Can anybody get the last word I want to use? Pension. Could say allowance. I like the word schemes here. Again, remember we want it in the plural because we haven't indicated that it's a singular. We haven't written any indefinite article, so we want pension schemes. The other two don't have plurals because they're uncountable nouns, insurance and time. Holiday time and pension schemes. Okay, so we got a word count there of 217. You could, arguably should write another sentence here because it might be a little bit too lopsided. I am very conscious that we've just gone over the hour, so I'm going to add a quick sentence here and you can kind of, let's say, decode this afterwards. Let's link it back to the previous idea though. I'm going to give you though a gap fill. What could go here? So it means to make worse. Begins with X. Very nice verb. When I say begins with X, I mean begins with EX. Exacerbate. Excellent. So that's a really nice verb to use to mean to make something worse. So this can exacerbate the sense of financial. Now up here, we wrote insecurity. Can we now paraphrase that? Add a synonym.
نیکو
Economy doesn't work here. We want to talk about something bad. This is something bad because we're talking about what self-employed people must face. We want to suggest that it's a bad thing. Instability, yes. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, someone's got their microphone on. Can everybody make sure that their microphones are off? Just so that we don't have any background noise there. So financial anxiety, you could write as well, but instability also fine. Now, finally, how do we open the last sentence? In conclusion, comma. Now, we have a sentence that looks at positive things. Remember, it's not a paragraph that looks at the advantages, but it is a pretty positive paragraph nonetheless. It creates an opportunity to look at contrast. So we're going to go with an although this time. So although the internet, so I'm immediately introducing the cause. Notice that. So you can do it this way around. You can either say although one of the causes of increased self-employment is, or you could say although the internet has, you could say caused, but let's be more specific. Let's go with helped many people to, I'm going to give you another gap fill here. What verb could we use? Take on, it's good, phrasal verb there. Start self-employment. I want something that kind of indicates the barriers we were talking about. And it's like when you go into a building, there's a barrier with security guards. Exactly, you enter that building. So it's help people to enter self-employment. You wouldn't really overcome self-employment. That suggests you overcome a problem. But yes, you enter self-employment by overcoming a problem. So has helped many people to enter self-employment. This, let's say, type of, I don't want to write employment again because it's right here. So let's just go this type of work. Still, I'm going to create a gap fill here. Let's go with disadvantage. We haven't even used the word disadvantages yet, which is great. We have drawbacks, we've got difficulties, so we've got disadvantages. Still, what could we go here? Consist brings about. Here's one that a lot of people don't use, but you can use. We usually think of it in a different context, like with a bag. It's still, is it carry? Think about the conjugation. Good, Amir, carries. This type of work still carries disadvantages. Now, up here we added such as, so I don't want to write such as again, but you could paraphrase this with what? Like is good, but it's a bit on the basic side. Think about the conjugation again. Good, including. So the word form there is important. Including, including. And now this is well, the last tricky part. How can you sum up your disadvantages with just a couple of words? So we had financial insecurity. What's another word for financial? Beginning with E. It's not a perfect synonym in all cases, but economical, I would just say economic here. Economic insecurity we had, anxiety we had. What's again, this is an example of collocation. I wouldn't say economic anxiety, I wouldn't really say economic insecurity. I would say financial insecurity and financial anxiety, but I would say economic uncertainty. Opposite, Manpreet. You want to add that prefix in there. You've got certainty. I want the opposite. Uncertainty. Good. Well done there from all of you saying uncertainty. Okay, that's the first thing, including economic uncertainty. And what's the opposite to when you possess something? If you don't possess something, there is a lack. Yeah, we could say a lack or an absence of. Now here is where I said that we were going to need to paraphrase. So we had perks. The other one we could say was benefits. And you could even, last word here, show one more bit of topic related vocabulary. Benefits pack. This is what you're provided with by work. Yeah. I mean, they mean the same thing, really. You're provided with benefits, or you're given a benefits package, or multiple employees are given multiple benefits packages. So we can look at this in the plural here as well. Again, you're just showing your topic related vocabulary, your collocations, your less common vocabulary, all boosting that vocabulary score. Last thing, what's missing from this? Noun of noun phrase. Excellent. Well done, Tarek. Jessica, we've all got the in there. So the absence of benefits packages, but of course you could say lack as well. Now, there we have a very, very nice looking essay. And let's see the word count, 261. As I said, at this point, about halfway through, it looked like it was going to be quite, maybe a bit too long, but 261, I reckon you're probably quite surprised that it's that short because it just contains so much information. It has ideas which are very well developed because we work together to develop those ideas and include lots of complex vocabulary, collocations, topic-related vocabulary. We've got lots of nice complex structures in here. We've got a mixture of tenses, so we're really showing grammatical range. We used referencing throughout. We used appropriate cohesive devices. And the most important thing, we responded accurately to the task. We didn't include an unnecessary, inappropriate opinion. We looked at the reasons, we looked at the disadvantages, and we referenced this idea about it being nowadays as well. So we're covering all the bases. So that brings us really to a close on this particular essay. So we're going to end it there. As I said, remember that this is being recorded for you. So after the lecture, I will send this your way, the link to it. Any questions, as always, please direct them to the Udemy Q&A. That's always the best place to ask me questions. Sometimes it takes me a bit of time to get to you, but that's the best place to ask me questions because I'm getting a few questions from you now. Does anybody have any feedback at all? Anything that you want to talk about within this particular lecture? Okay, it looks like people are pretty happy. Thank you everybody for your gratitude, for expressing your gratitude. I'm really pleased that you found this lecture useful. As I said, I'll send you an email after the lecture today. Remember that we